having one miscarriage after another. A doctor just said, we don't have any idea why this is happening to you. So if you want a child to be, guaranteed a child, all I can say to you is adoption at this point.
This is probably maybe the only podcast piece of kind of content out there in the adoption space where you have like an adult adoptee and their adoptive mom, in a podcast together, just chatting it up. So first off, I've been speaking about my story, talking about it. You've been a part of that to an extent. You've been in some videos before, but a lot of people may not know who you are. They may have heard about you, heard about your and dad's journey a little bit. Who are you, Mom?
Well, I'm your mom. I'm your adoptive mom.
Yeah.
I've been your mom since you were 2 days before your second birthday.
Yeah.
Mom to 4 other kids, so 5 total.
Jeez.
2 adopted kids, 3 biological kids. My adopted kids are my bookends, so my 3 bio kids are in the middle. Mm-hmm. Been married to your dad for 30 years this October. Mm. Grandmother to your wonderful son. Yeah, I teach.
Oh.
And I feel like that about wraps me up.
Yeah, and you've been teaching for a long time, you and Dad both. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many years have you been teaching?
12 to 15, probably.
12 to 15, yeah. I mean, ever since I can remember, you and Dad were both teaching. And how did you meet Dad?
So Dad and I met as soon as he was out of college. He moved to Virginia to teach at a school. It was a church school. I went to church there. My dad always wanted a son. He had 3 girls.
Yeah.
And so he always took in the bachelor men that would come to church, trying to make one of them his son. And I guess he succeeded.
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how long have you and Dad been married? You said 30 years almost?
It'll be 30 years in October. Yeah.
October, yeah.
Yep.
That's pretty crazy. And then I was your first child. So when did you guys get married? How did that whole thing come to be? Because I guess your dad took him in. Grandpa took him in. But when did the whole thing start to be a relationship?
So we dated for about 9 months. Okay. Our house was my dad's, much like the house you grew up in. My home was the home where a lot of people hung out. My parents, it was an open door policy all the time. So there were always people hanging out there.
Yeah.
And so he was just one of them. I don't know, maybe for 6 to 9 months or so, he was just hanging out. Then he asked me out one night.
Oh.
And that
started everything.
So then we just dated for about 9 months, and we were engaged for 5 weeks.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
I don't think I even knew that for some reason. 5 weeks.
Yep.
Pulling the trigger fast.
Yeah. Well,
I guess it's paid off 5 kids later.
Yeah. It was one of those situations where we either had to get married really quick or wait like over a year because of different other weddings in the family.
Oh,
and we just decided to get married quick.
Very quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And then I'm the oldest. Mm-hmm. So married. What did you guys do next? Was it career focused, kid focused?
So, we were young, so we always wanted to have kids.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we were actively trying, but not using birth control.
Right.
I don't think I've ever said that phrase to any of my children.
Great part of this podcast. Yeah.
So, after a bit of that, knew something was probably wrong. So for 4 years, nothing.
Yeah.
And then could get pregnant, but they would all resulted in miscarriages.
Right.
So total, now 30 years later, obviously I'm not having children anymore, but
right.
But total, I think I don't remember if the number's at 9 or 11, but that many miscarriages. Yeah. Wow. So 4 years until we got pregnant, and then 3 more years before we would carry one to term.
Okay.
So lots of miscarriages in that 3 years. So probably about 2 years into that, having one miscarriage after another, a doctor just said, we don't have any idea why this is happening to you. Yeah. All of the tests come back fine. There are some maybe iffy things, but nothing major that we can guarantee. So if you want a child to be, guaranteed a child, all I can say to you is adoption at this point.
Oh.
So, and that wasn't like a devastating thing for us to hear because we always felt like we would adopt anyway.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a bittersweet, like hard to hear, but not devastating as well. So we took some time to process that, and I don't know, maybe about 6 months later, there you come.
Wow. Pretty crazy. And also, like, not obviously it's a unique story to you, but also just a common story that we hear with adoption. It's like struggling, kind of seeming like this is kind of the only way it's going to happen, and having to navigate through that.
Right.
Now, Dad wasn't as pro adoption as you. I do know that.
Yeah.
Obviously, he is now.
Yeah.
There's no bitterness, but what was it like trying to get him to go to the adoption agency?
Well, I wouldn't say he wasn't pro adoption. Like he always knew that he wanted to do that.
Right.
But as you know, I'm the impulsive one in our family.
Right.
Any pet we have is because I decided on a morning that
time.
we needed a pet and had it by the time we went to bed that night.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, every single time.
And regret most of it.
Yeah. Still living with some of those mistakes.
Yes. Your dad, though, is anytime we buy a car, before the internet, this is just a story that describes your dad. Before the internet, the first new car we ever bought, he, no lie, spent every day for 3 weeks at the library researching car.
Sounds like Dad.
Yeah. So that's where your dad was on adoption. It was not something that he wanted to do.
Right. Just
quickly.
right away.
Right. Just right away.
Right.
So I called the adoption agency, probably 4 or 5 months after hearing that news, saying, my husband and I want to adopt. My husband's not quite ready, and I wonder if it would help him if we could just have a meeting where he could ask some detailed questions.
Right.
So we went in on May 9th, and it would have been 2000, and you had just been dropped off that day.
Wow.
And the social worker, after answering all of our questions, just said, as an example, this would be the kind of child. Now, obviously, she was pitching you.
Yeah.
You were the first, at that point, this particular adoption agency only dealt in infants.
Yeah.
So for that office, you were the first non-infant. So you were about to turn 2.
Wow.
And they didn't have a lot of programs in place or a lot of training for non-infants.
Yeah.
So I think their main priority was get him in a stable home quickly.
Right. Yeah.
So showed us a picture. Knowing your dad, I just said, when we got into the parking lot, didn't even get in the car, I said, I want that child. If you don't, tell me now. He actually told me he didn't.
Yeah.
But he did, but he didn't want to get my hopes up.
Right.
And he called them the next morning.
Wow.
And the paperwork, even then, like today, it's really unheard of because the training is better and there's, more.
It's an extensive process.
Yeah, it's more extensive. But even then, it was unheard of. So that we would have started the process on May 10th, and you moved in with us on June 9th.
Wow. Okay.
So we had not had anything. We had
You're
not
talking days.
Well, 29 days.
Wow. Sheesh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we started
29 days.
visiting with you. We probably a week into that process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? The story that always comes to my mind, I think you told it growing up, was the story of Joseph. And I think this is because either you or somebody growing up in church would always tell the story of Joseph.
You mean Abraham?
The baby that floats down the Egyptian river?
Oh, Moses.
Moses, gosh. I did grow
Isaac,
up in
you
church.
did grow up in church.
I did grow up in church. I'm sorry. So yes, the story of Moses, where it's like he goes down the river and like same day the Egyptian, princess or whatever finds him.
Yeah. Not that I'm saying I'm a princess.
Right. not that comparison, but very.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I grew up hearing that story as kind of a symbolism for our journey, and I think that it is very interesting. That's like a same day situation. I'm not sure how often that happens, but then also being the first 2-year-old, I actually didn't know that either. So I'm learning a lot here today too, which is fun. And so same day.
Yeah.
So if you 29 days into it, what were you guys like? What was those 9 days like for you guys?
Oh,
Like, what did you even do?
it's crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, getting our house ready for a child.
Sure.
You or just us having a child was so desired by our community because it had been such a process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And church community, we worked at the same school, so our family, our school community, everyone just walking through all of those miscarriages with us and everything. So we had all of those those days of filling out paperwork, people helping us get ready. It was very interesting. On the day you moved in with us, it was the last day of school, or maybe like the school was out and it was the teacher. Teachers have to clean up for a day or something.
Yeah.
And I had asked my boss, I said, we have an appointment, I think it was 2:00 in the afternoon, to pick up our child.
Yeah.
Can I please have this day off to just get the last minute things? And she wouldn't give me that day off. And I remember being so angry. And you know me, like, I don't get angry, but then when I do, it's like it's like
You're
0
angry.
to, I was so angry. Come to find out, they had planned a school-wide surprise shower for us. Wow. And so at noon, it was a lunch. Yeah. So we left school that day with more toys and clothes than you could ever need.
Yeah.
And then the following day, once we had you, my family did the same thing, all of your family in Virginia. And then 2 weeks later, we went to West Virginia to your dad's family. They did the same thing.
Yeah. So you were stocked up.
Yeah.
I do have all those good outfits in all the baby pictures.
Yeah.
I have a ton of good outfits in the baby pictures. So that explains that.
Yeah. So that everyone was just so excited. So excited. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's powerful, just kind of like the way people rallied around you. Mm-hmm. And also just like there's so much loss mixed in there. Mm-hmm. And I think there's so much loss mixed in for adoptees and adoptive parents with adoption. Mm-hmm. And so it's like when you're talking about your journey, there were all these children that didn't come to birth that you lost. There's the separation of me and my birth family, but then there is also this kind of excitement and joy about the family that got built. And now that family has led us to here.
Right.
And so it's like, it's such a, I think one of the things about me and you that's probably something that ties us together is so much pain that fuels a lot of the things that we do.
Right.
And a lot of the things that have come to be for us. Like you've always been such a mama bear type of mom. Mm-hmm. And that probably comes from that pain as well, being just so overprotective.
Right.
And, I think a lot of my drive and a lot of what makes me me comes from the pain that I've always felt inside. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's something that makes us both really difficult people.
Well, your dad has always said that our relationship, the reason, there are multiple reasons. I mean, boys and strong-willed moms, like independent moms, are going to butt heads.
Oh,
because as you're getting into manhood, you don't want a mom telling you what to do. So they're going to bust. You've got the negative, the normal tension there. Yeah. But your dad has always said, like, to be an adoptive mother and son, you two are almost identical.
Yeah. And hopefully that'll shine through.
Yeah. And so identical people usually do. And especially it's like our emotions are the same. And so we're going to butt heads.
Yeah. And I think those are going to be probably some of the better stories we get to.
But, it's interesting. One of the best things or piece of advice we ever heard, it was actually when we went to adopt your younger brother, we were told by a social worker, every adoption starts with death.
Right.
It's a death of a relationship. And I think for us, like that was literally both of us.
Yeah.
Exactly. I've got the death of literal babies.
Yeah, exactly.
And just moving on to the next story, and then you with the death of the relationship of your birth family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And seeing that play out, I think for us has been super heavy. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that plays out in a ton of homes. Mm-hmm. And it's like, for us, we've had to just kind of live it without anything. And I think one of the unique things about like both the doc that we've got to do together now and this is that like there's probably a ton of people in these exact situations where like I had so much trouble connecting with you as a child because of my pain. and you wanted to be connected more than anybody because of your pain. And it's like this story is playing out across so many homes, and
people don't know how to put words to it. They
no,
don't know
not
what's
put
going
words to
on.
it at all.
Yeah.
And it's taken us so long to get there that I think that this will be a really interesting thing for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so thanks for coming today, and let's talk more about our family, because I think people have gotten kind of slowly introduced to our family, seen more and more of those pieces. They've seen like you and Dad. They've seen Sarah, Zach, Jack, and Micah.
So I not only am I your mom, but I have 4 other kids. It's very interesting. It has to be a parenting style. I feel like this is abnormal, but we have raised 5 very independent kids that all are just passionate about something, different things, sometimes the extreme spectrum of the same things, which causes some interesting conversations in the home. But I don't feel like we have raised a meek one in our family,
No.
which makes for lots of fun and lots of chaos.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and very tired parents.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And you adopted me in 2000. And Sarah, the next solace, is like right
after that. So we adopted you in June, and I found out I was pregnant with her in December. And a lot of people will say, "Oh, that's always happened. You adopt, and so you calm down." It actually wasn't my story. I continued to have miscarriages and to continue to have trouble. Sarah was actually a very high risk pregnancy. As a matter of fact, my first sonogram, they couldn't find a heartbeat, and the blood work didn't look good. So they prepared me that I had lost her as well, scheduled a DNC, and my OBGYN was just like, let's just do one more sonogram to make sure. And at that sonogram, he actually had tears in his eyes and said, "There's a heartbeat."
Wow.
Yeah, and but the whole pregnancy was high risk, and so I was, within your first year of living with us here as your mom, I'm on bed rest for I think 3 months of that pregnancy.
Wow.
Flat bed
3
rest.
months. Yeah, couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But yeah, so Sarah is now, we're in 2023. So Sarah is 22, just turned 22 last week. Extremely independent.
Yeah. For sure.
Extremely passionate. I think has inherited her dad and I's love for people who don't have a voice. And quite frankly, I got married so young, I didn't get to put a lot of action to that besides in our home.
Yeah.
And Sarah is like, I'm living through her right now.
Yeah. She's out there. She's,
She moved to Spain today.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah, exactly. She's gone.
Yeah.
And then Zach, a couple years later, 2 years later.
Yep. 2 years later, there was Zach, another one who says whatever he's thinking.
Hard-headed.
Yep. Very hard-headed. He will be 20 in November.
Yeah.
Jackson is 17.
Yeah.
I don't know where his thoughts are.
Jack creates a world of his own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have Micah, the baby, who is 15 now, and he was the last one that was adopted.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what kind of led to Micah's adoption? Because, you're 4 kids already.
Yeah.
I know me and Micah are a decade apart.
Right.
And so, you already have a 10-year-old and 3 more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always wanted to adopt again. We did not want you to be the only adopted child in our home.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, had we not waited for 10 years, maybe we would have done it again, too.
Right.
But we had Sarah, and then I just really wanted to know what was wrong with me because I still was having miscarriages.
Right.
So went through some testing and procedures, ended up pregnant with Zachary, and then Jack was a surprise. Wow. So it wasn't that we meant to wait for 10 years. It it's like,
happened.
It's just that's how it happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, Micah was funny. Like I said, I didn't want you to be the only adopted child. And your dad and I, as you know, obviously, teach or have taught and are getting back into it now, online classes to high school kids. And your dad was teaching a kid in Hawaii. And for some reason, a bunch of the families had come to town, and we hosted a dinner in our backyard. And one of the kids, said to the mom from Hawaii, "I wish my parents would adopt another brown child." And it just so happened that her family, 2 weeks before that, had taken in a homeless teenager.
Yeah.
And the day she got on the plane to come here, the girl told her she was pregnant.
Wow.
And she was like, oh, interesting.
Everything lines right up.
Yeah. So it was a little bit choppy. We, started that whole process. And then at one point, the birth mom decided on a different family.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. She got some interesting advice from their pastor when she was couldn't decide. And the pastor just said, look at your options. Who do you wish had raised you? Right. What kind of family do you wish you had been raised in? Yeah. And she came back to us with that advice. And that's how we ended up with Micah.
And Micah was quite a baby. Micah, you had to go to Hawaii for like 3 weeks.
Yeah. I had to be there for 3 weeks before the state had to give me permission to leave with him. Yeah.
So you've been through a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
long
suffering
journey
in Hawaii in February.
Not suffering in Hawaii, but the whole journey there.
Yeah.
And I think Jack being a surprise also makes sense for his personality too. He is a surprise in and of himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And for Dad, you just mentioned you and Dad teaching online again. People don't actually tend to know Dad as well, so I'm excited for him to actually jump on a couple of these episodes because I feel like you've gotten to speak a lot to your experience, and you speak really well into the adoption experience for like adoptive moms. But what is Dad up to? What is he doing?
Yeah. So Dad, I think one of the things that really plays into our home and just kind of the culture of our home. Yeah. Your dad and I are both humanities teachers, so we teach history and literature and things like that, speaking, public speaking, rhetoric, and your dad thoroughly believes that our culture, just who we are, that I don't know how to word this, that we can attribute who we are as a culture and Western civilization to the great works throughout Western civilization, that we can see a pattern. Yeah. And so he is passionate about teaching that. So he started, you were little, probably, I think you were going into second grade when he started teaching it online because he felt like it was, well, let's be honest, he needed income. Right. So he was a second job for him. But he was pretty passionate about offering this to homeschooling students so that they could get a quality Western civilization, Western civ education through great works, great books. And I would say that his love of that, passion of that, has kind of set the stage for our home and the culture of our home. Yeah. He was passionate that all of our kids be able to present themselves well. So you guys had public speaking, logic. So much. Unfortunately, before we found speech and debate, you missed out on that, but your younger siblings had that, Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I remember the co-op speaking class at 11.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just being run through different exercises and how to structure presentations from a very young age. And I think that is one thing that shows through in all of us is the ability to speak well, to put thoughts together. And I think that is something that you and Dad have both really kind of guided us through. And I always tell the stories of being in that class at 11. Yeah. It's you can see it especially in Sarah and Zach, who were in speech and debate, and now Jack, who's presenting. Yeah. And I'm sure Michael will do many things. Yeah.
I remember the first day I was teaching high schoolers. And I was so nervous, very intimidated by that. And your dad just said to me, look, you say it with confidence. No one knows. And I feel like he taught that to all you guys.
Yes.
Just say it with confidence.
Just say it with confidence.
Yeah.
And so, I think we all can get caught up saying everything in confidence. All of us. Yeah. Man.
So, but he walking through all of that, all of that is just as painful for him. Right. But then as the husband, he's trying to be a support to me and hold things together. And I kind of feel like in our marriage, and maybe this is common, we've taken turns having to hold things together while the other one is.
Well, I think that, that makes sense in life and in marriage. I mean, I'm not married, but, you lean on people as you go through different things. I've had to lean on you guys. I've had to lean on friends of mine to get me through hard moments. And so it would make sense as you guys are going through these ups and downs that it would switch around. And, we've experienced like other family loss in the mix, things that have brought things out of, I think, everybody in the family that's changed things. And then Sarah's gotten married as well, which has changed dynamics.
Right.
And so we have Christian a part of the family now too, which I think adds a whole nother layer.
Right.
Which I think has actually been really cool to see how our family has changed with now a fourth boy. Is that what it is?
Yeah. No, fifth. I have 4 boys. Well,
Yeah.
Fifth,
So the
sixth
fifth
if
is
you count
Sarah.
Eden.
Yeah, it's true. And there's another life change. It's like Eden being in the mix changed a lot about me and you and Dad's relationship. Changed a lot about my relationship, I think, with parents in general.
Yeah.
And so we've gone through so many of these like big dynamic shifts that I think that there's going to be, I don't know, something. It's not even just this, but I think there's going to be something that comes out of it just because it's been so deep for all of us. Like, and I think everybody feels it no matter where they fall in the family, like from Micah to Sarah to me. It's just like the parenting, the ups and downs of like us, my behavior issues, Sarah's non-behavior issues. Sarah's non-behavior issues, but attitude issues. It's like all of us have had our own unique thing.
Yeah.
While you and Dad have also been going through your own unique life journey. And now I think that now that everybody's kind of on that verge of transitioning into adulthood, there's like, whenever we do family nights, I feel like there's an air of like freedom and looseness and a little bit of craziness that always comes out because we're not young anymore and everybody can kind of just like acknowledge whether it's the pain or the good or the bad. And it just becomes a part of like the laughter and jokes. And we're all honestly brutally mean to each other sometimes. But it all comes out in a way that I think is very healing and shows that we've all bonded really well.
Right, yeah. That's what I said. I actually just recently kind of had that realization. You'll know as a parent, you beat yourself up for most of your kids' lives. Like you just, as a parent, you never think you're really doing a great enough job. And we do mess up. I mean, that's legitimate. Sometimes we mess up a lot,
Absolutely,
kind of thing, because we're, fallible human beings. But I said to your dad recently, I said, the fact that our kids are growing into adulthood, loving one another and having a support system in one another shows me we did something.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think that's true. Because I think, especially for me, it was so hard to try and want to bond so much in my life and try to want to connect so much in my life that it's been interesting to watch now us all have such a deeper relationship than maybe we ever had growing up. And certainly some of the siblings I think were closer than others. Like I was closer with Sarah growing up, and then Sarah and Zach.
Yeah, you have different seasons.
Sarah and Zach are close as I got into adulthood. But now when we're all together, I think there is a very natural air that comes out. I think you see it when you see like the doc. I think you also just see it whenever anybody visits, because we also, just like your home growing up, we also have a home where a lot of people come to. And so like whether it's me visiting, coming over with Eden or Sarah or Zach's or Jack's friends over, I think that air is always there. And I think I'm excited to see where that goes because I'm the only one with a kid so far.
Yeah. I think you guys also bond over, let's see how mad we can make mom and how shocked we can make dad.
Absolutely. Shocked we can make dad. Doesn't take much to shock dad. But yeah, we're also at the tail end of the journey because more kids will come, more partners will come. There'll be new dynamics entering, and I think I'm excited to see where that goes.
I love it. I love it at Thanksgiving this past year when we put all 9 leaves on our table.
Oh, yeah.
And it stretched across the whole room. That was just like heaven for me.
Exactly. And little Eden's starting to make his way too.
Yeah.